What if I told you that your entire life, your success, your income, your health, your relationships is not the result of one big decision, but the result of thousands of small ones you barely even notice? Because the truth is, success doesn't explode into your life overnight, it builds quietly, invisibly through tiny actions repeated every single day. And as revealed in the compound effect, these small choices are either working for you or against you right now, shaping your future whether you're aware of it or not. And this is where everything changes. Because the moment you understand that every habit, every routine, every decision is compounding, you stop underestimating the little things, you stop waiting for the big break, and you start focusing on what truly matters, the daily disciplines that create extraordinary results over time. And this is the secret most people ignore because it's not flashy, it's not exciting, it's not instant. But it works every single time because just like money compounds in an investment account, your actions compound in your life. And the question is, are they building your success or quietly destroying it? Because the difference between where you are now and where you want to be is not a massive leap. It is a series of small steps taken consistently. And this is why Darren Hardy says that success is not about what you do once in a while. It's about what you do every day, because those daily actions are votes for the person you are becoming, and over time, those votes create your identity, your results, and your future, and this is where the real power lies. Because if small actions can lead you in the wrong direction, they can also lead you in the right one. They can transform your habits, your mindset, your income, and your entire life. And this is one of the most powerful financial freedom principles you will ever understand, that wealth, success, and freedom are not created in moments. They are created in patterns, in consistency, in discipline, and in time. And once you truly grasp this, once you commit to it, once you start making small, intentional choices every day, you unlock a force that is unstoppable, predictable, and life-changing. And the only question left is, will you use the compound effect to build your future? And will you let it build one for you by default? Imagine this. You are just one small decision away from a completely different life. Not a massive decision, not a life-altering breakthrough, but something so small, so simple, that you might ignore it, overlook it, or underestimate it. And that is exactly why most people never reach their potential, because they are waiting for big moments while success is quietly being built in the small ones. And as revealed in the compound effect, your life right now is nothing more than the result of tiny choices repeated over time. Choices so subtle they feel insignificant, yet so powerful they shape your entire future. And this is where everything changes, because the moment you understand that success is not created in leaps, but in layers, not in intensity, but in consistency, you begin to see your life differently. You begin to see that every action, every habit, every routine is either moving you closer to the life you want or further away from it. And this is where most people get it wrong. They look for quick wins, instant results, overnight success. But the truth is, there is no magic, there is no shortcut. There is only the compound effect, the principle that small, smart choices repeated daily will lead to extraordinary results. And the opposite is also true. Small, poor choices, repeated daily, will slowly destroy your progress without you even noticing. And that is the danger. Because the compound effect is invisible in the beginning, it doesn't show immediate results, it doesn't give instant feedback, it requires patience, discipline, and faith, and most people quit before the results ever appear. But those who understand it, those who commit to it, those who stay consistent when nothing seems to be happening, are the ones who eventually experience massive transformation. And this is not just about success in business or money. This applies to every area of your life, your health, your relationships, your mindset, your income. Everything compounds, every action builds upon the last, and this is where the power lies. Because once you take control of your small daily actions, you take control of your future, and this is one of the most powerful financial freedom principles you will ever understand. That wealth is not created in one big moment. It is created through consistent habits, disciplined decisions, and time, just like the example of the penny that doubles every day, where in the beginning it seems insignificant, almost meaningless, but over time it grows exponentially, turning into something extraordinary. And this is exactly how your life works. The small things you do today may not seem important, but over time they will define everything. And this is why Darren Hardy emphasizes a powerful truth. Success is not something you pursue. It is something you attract by the person you become, because when you focus on improving yourself daily, when you build better habits, when you make better choices, success becomes inevitable. And this is where the real question begins, not what big change you need to make, but what small action you can take today, what habit you can improve, what decision you can make differently, because that is where your future is being created, not in the dramatic moments, but in the quiet, consistent ones. And the question is, are you ready to take control of those moments? Or will you continue to let them shape your life without you even realizing it? As you move deeper into this journey, you begin to realize something that most people never stop to consider, that your life is not shaped by your intentions, not by your goals, not even by your dreams, but by your choices, the small, seemingly insignificant decisions you make every single day. Often without thinking, often on autopilot, and as revealed in the compound effect, these choices are the starting point of everything, because every action you take begins with a decision, and every decision sets a direction, and that direction, repeated over time, determines your destiny. And this is where the truth becomes both simple and uncomfortable, because it means that everything you have in your life right now, every success, every struggle, every result is the outcome of the choices you have made up to this point. And while that may feel confronting, it is also incredibly empowering. Because if your choices created your current reality, then new choices can create a completely different future. And this is where most people get trapped, not because they are incapable, but because they are unconscious. They are sleepwalking through their decisions, reacting instead of choosing, drifting instead of directing. And this is why Darren Hardy emphasizes that awareness is the first step to transformation, because you cannot change what you do not notice. And once you begin to notice, once you begin to see the patterns, the habits, the routines that are shaping your life, you gain the power to change them. And this is where the smallest shifts begin to create the biggest impact, because the compound effect does not require massive action. It requires consistent, intentional action. And this is where the concept of responsibility becomes central, because when you take full ownership of your choices, you stop blaming circumstances, you stop waiting for external changes, and you start focusing on what you can control, your actions, your habits, your decisions. And this is where your power lies. And this is one of the most important financial freedom principles you can apply. That ownership creates control, because when you take responsibility for your financial decisions, your spending habits, your investments, and your daily behavior, you begin to move from reacting to your financial situation to actively shaping it. And this is where another powerful truth emerges, that small decisions matter more than big ones, because it is not the occasional major choice that defines your life. It is the daily repeated actions that compound over time. And this is where most people underestimate the impact of their behavior, because the effects are not immediate, they are delayed. And because they are delayed, they are often ignored. But just like the example of the three friends, where small daily habits eventually created massive differences in health, income, and happiness, your daily choices are quietly building your future, whether you realize it or not. And this is where the danger of unconscious living becomes clear. Because when you are not intentional about your choices, you are still making them, but they are being driven by habits, by environment, by default patterns, and these patterns may not be aligned with the life you want. And this is where the shift begins, because once you become aware, once you start questioning your actions, asking yourself why you do what you do, you begin to break free from automatic behavior, and you start making decisions that are aligned with your goals, your values, and your vision. And this is where discipline becomes essential, not as restrict, but as direction, because discipline is simply the ability to choose what you want most over what you want now. And this is where many people struggle, because they prioritize immediate comfort over long-term success. They choose convenience over growth. They choose ease over progress. And while these choices may feel harmless in the moment, over time they compound into outcomes that are far from what they desire. And this is why Darren Hardy shares a powerful insight, that you make your choices, and then your choices make you, because every decision you make reinforces a pattern, and that pattern becomes your identity. And that identity shapes your results. And this is where the connection between choices and identity becomes critical. Because when you change your choices, you begin to change who you are. And when you change who you change what you attract, what you create, and what you achieve. And this is where the idea of intentional living becomes transformative. Because instead of drifting through life, you begin to design it, you begin to make decisions based on where you want to go, not just where you are. And this is where another financial principle becomes clear. That direction is more important than speed because it does not matter how fast you are moving if you are moving in the wrong direction. And many people are working hard, putting in effort, staying busy, but their choices are not aligned with their goals. And as a result, they are compounding effort without progress. And this is where clarity becomes your greatest asset. Because when you are clear on what you want, you can make decisions that support it, you can eliminate distractions, you can focus your energy, and you can build momentum in the right direction. And this is where the power of tracking comes into play, because what gets measured gets improved, and when you track your behaviors, your habits, your progress, you bring awareness to your actions, and that awareness allows you to adjust, to refine, and to improve. And this is one of the most practical ways to apply the compound effect by making your choices visible, by holding yourself accountable, and by consistently aligning your actions with your goals. And this is where transformation becomes inevitable, because when you consistently make better choices, even small ones, over time they accumulate, they compound, and they create results that may seem extraordinary, but are actually the natural outcome of consistent intentional behavior. And as you continue on this path, remember this powerful truth. Every choice you make is a vote for the person you are becoming, because when you understand that, when you begin to see each decision as an opportunity to shape your future, you stop taking them lightly. You stop acting unconsciously, and you start living with purpose, with intention, and with direction. And that is where your life begins to change in ways you never thought possible. As you continue this journey, something even more powerful begins to reveal itself. Something that sits beneath your choices and quietly controls them. Something that determines whether your decisions will lead you towards success or pull you away from it. And that something is... Because as explained in the compound effect, every choice you make repeatedly becomes a behavior, and every behavior repeated consistently becomes a habit. And once a habit is formed, it begins to operate automatically, without your conscious effort, without your awareness shaping your actions, your results, and ultimately your life. And this is where the real challenge lies, because habits are powerful, they are efficient, and they are persistent. And while they can work for you, they can just as easily work against you. And the most dangerous part is that you often don't even notice them, because they become part of your identity, part of your routine, part of what feels normal. And this is why Darren Hardy emphasizes that success is not about doing something extraordinary once. It is about doing the right things consistently until they become automatic, until they become who you are. And this is where most people fail, not because they lack knowledge, not because they lack ability, but because they underestimate the power of their daily habits. They focus on big goals while ignoring small behaviors. They chase motivation instead of building discipline. And as a result, they remain stuck in cycles that do not serve them. And this is where awareness becomes your first breakthrough, because you cannot change a habit you do not recognize. And once you begin to observe your daily routines, your patterns, your automatic behaviors, you start to see the truth. That many of the things you do every day are not intentional. They are conditioned, they are repeated without thought, and they are shaping your results, whether you like it or not. And this is where the concept of tracking becomes a game changer, because when you measure your actions, when you write them down, when you make them visible, you bring them into your conscious awareness, and that awareness gives you the power to change them, to adjust them, and to improve them. And this is why one of the most effective strategies Darren Hardy shares is to track your habits. Whether it's your spending, your eating, your productivity, or your time, because once you see the truth of your behavior, you can no longer ignore it. And this is where transformation begins, not with massive change, but with small, consistent adjustments. because the compound effect thrives on consistency, not intensity. And this is where another powerful principle comes into play. The idea that you don't need to completely overhaul your life, you just need to start small. Because small changes are easier to maintain, easier to repeat, and easier to build upon, and over time, those small changes create massive results. And this is where the concept of habit stacking becomes incredibly effective, because instead of trying to create entirely new routines, you attach new behaviors to existing ones, you build on what is already there. And this increases your chances of success, because you are not relying on willpower alone, you are creating systems that support your growth. And this is where discipline becomes your greatest ally. Because while motivation may come and go, discipline creates consistency. And consistency creates results, and this is one of the most important financial freedom principles you can apply. That wealth is built through habits, not events, because your financial future is not determined by one big decision, but by the small financial habits you practice daily, how you spend, how you save, how you invest, and how you manage your resources, and these habits compound over time, creating either financial stability or financial struggle, depending on the choices you make. And this is why understanding and controlling your habits is essential, because they are the foundation of everything you achieve. And this is where another powerful insight emerges, that bad habits are often easier to form than good ones, because they provide immediate gratification, they feel good in the moment. They require less effort, but over time they create negative consequences, while good habits often require effort, discipline, and delayed gratification. But over time they create positive outcomes, and this is where the real test lies. Your ability to choose what is beneficial in the long term over what is comfortable in the short term, and this is where identity plays a crucial role, because when you begin to see yourself as someone who is disciplined, someone who is consistent, someone who follows through, your habits begin to align with that identity, and your actions become a reflection of who you believe you are. And this is why Darren Hardy emphasizes that success is not something you do, it's something you become. Because when you change your habits, you change your identity. And when you change your identity, you change your life. And this is where the compound effect becomes unstoppable. Because once your habits are aligned with your goals, once your daily actions are moving you in the right direction, success is no longer a possibility. It becomes a certainty. And as you continue forward, remember this powerful truth. Your habits will determine your future long before your results are visible. Because what you do every day matters more than what you do once in a while. And when you take control of your habits, you take control of your life, your success, and your financial future, one small, consistent step at a time. As you continue deeper into this transformation, you begin to understand that choices create habits, habits create results, but there is another invisible force that determines whether those habits accelerate your success or quietly destroy it. And that force is momentum. Because as revealed in the compound effect, momentum is what turns small actions into unstoppable progress. It is what takes your daily disciplines and amplifies them into massive outcomes. And once you understand how momentum works, you realize that success is not just about starting, it is about continuing. It is about building a rhythm so strong that it carries you forward even when motivation fades. And this is where most people fail, not because they cannot start, but because they cannot sustain. They begin with excitement, with energy, with intention. But when the results are slow, when the progress is invisible, when the effort feels repetitive, they lose momentum, they stop, and when they stop, everything resets. And this is why Darren Hardy emphasizes that consistency is the key, because momentum is built through repetition, through showing up day after day, even when you don't feel like it, even when it seems like nothing is happening, because something is always happening beneath the surface. The compound effect is always working, whether you see it or not, and this is where the concept of Big Mo comes into play. The powerful force of momentum that, once activated, begins to work in your favor, making everything easier, making progress faster, and making success feel natural. And this is where the real shift occurs, because in the beginning, everything feels hard. Every action requires effort. Every decision requires discipline. But once momentum builds, those same actions become automatic. They become part of your identity, part of your routine, and this is where success begins to accelerate, not because you are working harder, but because your systems are working better. And this is where the danger of negative momentum also becomes clear, because just as positive habits can build upward momentum, negative habits can create downward momentum, pulling you further away from your goals with each passing day. And the most dangerous part is that negative momentum often feels comfortable. It feels easy, it feels familiar, but over time it leads to results that are far from what you desire. And this is why awareness and discipline must work together, because you must not only recognize your patterns, but also consistently choose actions that move you in the right direction. And this is where another powerful financial freedom principle emerges. That momentum multiplies results. Because when you consistently invest, consistently save, consistently improve your skills, and consistently make smart financial decisions, those actions begin to compound, creating a momentum that accelerates your financial growth. And this is why the early stages are the most critical, because they require the most effort with the least visible reward. But once you push through that phase, once you stay consistent long enough for momentum to take over, everything begins to change. Opportunities appear, progress accelerates, and results become visible. And this is where many people give up too soon. They stop just before the breakthrough. They quit just before the results appear, and this is why Darren Hardy shares a powerful insight that a consistency compounds, because the longer you stay committed, the greater the momentum you build, and the greater the momentum, the easier it becomes to continue. And this is where your focus becomes essential, because momentum thrives on clarity and direction. When you know where you are going, when your actions are aligned with your goals, you create a flow that carries you forward. But when your focus is scattered, when your actions are inconsistent, momentum breaks and progress slows down, and this is why eliminating distractions becomes a critical part of success. Because every distraction is a break in momentum, every inconsistency is a reset. And this is where discipline becomes your greatest advantage, not as a burden, but as a tool, as a way to maintain your momentum even when conditions are not ideal. And this is where another key principle comes into play. The importance of routines, because routines create structure, and structure supports consistency, and consistency builds momentum. And this is why successful people rely on routines, not because they lack creativity, but because they understand that consistency is the foundation of progress. And this is where your environment also plays a significant role, because the people you surround yourself with, the information you consume, and the habits you are exposed to all influence your momentum. And this is why Darren Hardy emphasizes the importance of controlling your influences, because your environment can either support your growth or hinder it, and this is where you must become intentional, choosing environments that reinforce your goals. Surrounding yourself with people who inspire you and eliminating influences that pull you in the wrong direction. And this is where the compound effect becomes truly powerful, because when your choices, your habits, your environment, and your momentum are all aligned, you create a system that continuously drives you towards success. And this is where the journey becomes less about effort and more about flow. Less about forcing results and more about allowing them to emerge naturally from your consistent actions and as you continue forward. Remember this powerful truth: a momentum is the silent force that turns effort into excellence. Because when you learn to build it, protect it, and sustain it, you unlock a level of progress that feels effortless, but is actually the result of disciplined, consistent action over time. And that is where your life begins to transform in ways that once seemed impossible. As you move into this next level of understanding, something even more subtle yet incredibly powerful begins to emerge. Something that most people overlook completely, yet it silently shapes their behavior, their habits, and ultimately their destiny. And that is the power of influence. Because as revealed in the compound effect, no matter how strong your intentions are, no matter how clear your goals may be, your environment, your associations, and the information you consume are constantly influencing your actions, often without your awareness. And this is where many people unknowingly sabotage their own success because they focus on changing themselves while remaining surrounded by influences that reinforce the very behaviors they are trying to escape. And this creates an internal conflict, a constant battle between who they want to become and the environment that keeps pulling them back. And this is why Darren Hardy emphasizes that you must take control of your influences if you want to take control of your life. Because whether you realize it or not, you are being shaped every single day by three primary forces: the people you spend time with, the information you consume, and the environments you place yourself in. And these forces are either pushing you forward or holding you back. And there is no neutral ground because influence is constant. It is always working, just like the compound effect itself. And this is where the first critical realization begins: that the people around you matter more than you think. Because human beings are wired for connection, for imitation, for adaptation. And over time, you begin to adopt the behaviors, the beliefs, and even the standards of those you surround yourself with. And this is why the saying is so powerful: that you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Because their mindset becomes your mindset. Their habits become your habits, and their expectations become your expectations. And this is why if you are surrounded by people who settle, who complain, who avoid growth, you will find it incredibly difficult to break free from those patterns. But if you surround yourself with people who are driven, disciplined, and focused on growth, you will naturally begin to elevate your own behavior, because their influence will pull you upward. And this is one of the most important financial freedom principles you can apply: that proximity creates possibility. Because when you place yourself in environments where success is normal, where growth is expected, and where discipline is valued, you begin to see new opportunities, new standards, and new possibilities that were previously outside your awareness. And this is where your environment becomes a strategic tool, not just a background condition, because instead of passively accepting your surroundings, you begin to design them, to choose them intentionally, to place yourself in situations that support your goals. And this is where another powerful influence comes into play: the information you consume. Because what you read, what you watch, what you listen to, and what you focus on shapes your thinking, and your thinking shapes your actions, and your actions shape your results. And this is why Darren Hardy emphasizes the importance of guarding your mind. Because just as junk food can negatively impact your physical health, junk information can negatively impact your mental clarity, your focus, and your decision making. And this is where many people fall into a dangerous pattern: consuming content that entertains but does not educate, that distracts but does not develop. And over time, this creates a mindset that is reactive, unfocused, and unproductive. And this is why intentional learning becomes a key component of success. Because when you consistently feed your mind with valuable, growth-oriented information, you begin to think differently. You begin to see opportunities where others see obstacles, and you begin to take actions that align with your goals. And this is where the compound effect of knowledge becomes evident. Because small daily inputs of learning, when applied consistently, can lead to massive improvements in your skills, your understanding, and your results. And this is where another critical element comes into play: your environment itself, the physical and emotional spaces you occupy, because your surroundings can either support your habits or sabotage them. And this is why something as simple as organizing your workspace, removing distractions, or creating a routine-friendly environment can have a profound impact on your productivity and consistency. Because when your environment aligns with your goals, it reduces friction, it makes it easier to take the right actions, and it reinforces positive behaviors. And this is where the concept of environmental design becomes powerful, because instead of relying solely on willpower, you create systems that support your success. You make it easier to do what is right and harder to do what is wrong. And this is where another important truth emerges: that willpower is limited, but environment is powerful. Because while willpower can help you make the right decision once, Your environment influences your decisions repeatedly. And this is why changing your environment can often be more effective than trying to force yourself to change through sheer effort. And this is where the idea of protecting your momentum becomes critical, because the influences around you can either strengthen your momentum or break it. And this is why you must be intentional about what you allow into your life, what conversations you engage in, what habits you tolerate, and what standards you accept, because all of these factors are shaping your direction, whether you are aware of it or not. And this is where the compound effect becomes even more powerful, because when you align your influences with your goals, when you surround yourself with the right people, consume the right information, and create the right environment, you build a system that continuously reinforces your success. Oh. And this is where growth becomes easier, because you are no longer fighting against your surroundings, you are working with them, and this is where your progress accelerates, because every aspect of your life is contributing to your forward movement, and as you continue on this path. Remember this powerful truth: you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your environment. Because when you take control of your influences, you take control of your direction, your habits, and ultimately your results. And that is where your transformation becomes not just possible, but inevitable. And now, as we arrive at this final stage, everything begins to connect in a way that is both simple and incredibly powerful. Because you start to realize that success is not a mystery. It is not reserved for a select few. It is not the result of luck, talent, or timing. It is the result of a system, a predictable, measurable system that is always at work in your life. And as revealed in the compound effect, that system is built on small choices, consistent habits, sustained momentum, and intentional influences, all working together over time to create results that may seem extraordinary, but are actually the natural outcome of disciplined, repeated action. And this is where the final transformation takes place, because you stop searching for shortcuts, you stop waiting for the perfect moment, and you start trusting the process. You start understanding that every small step matters. Every decision counts, and every day is an opportunity to move closer to the life you want. And this is where patience becomes your greatest strength. Because the compound effect requires time, it requires persistence, and it requires the ability to continue even when the results are not immediately visible. And this is where most people fall short. They give up too soon. They abandon the process before the results have a chance to appear. And in doing so, they never experience the true power of compounding. But those who stay consistent, those who remain committed, those who continue to take small positive actions day after day, are the ones who eventually reach a point where everything changes, where the results begin to accelerate, where the progress becomes visible, and where the effort starts to feel effortless. And this is where the magic of the compound effect truly reveals itself, because what once required discipline now becomes automatic, what once felt difficult now feels natural, and what once seemed impossible now becomes inevitable. And this is where your identity shifts, because you are no longer someone who is trying to succeed. You become someone who is successful by design, someone whose habits, choices, and behaviors are aligned with their goals. And this alignment creates a level of consistency that produces results over and over again. And this is where the connection to financial freedom becomes undeniable. Because wealth is not built through one big opportunity, it is built through consistent, disciplined action over time, through saving, investing, learning, and improving. And this is why one of the most powerful financial principles you can adopt is the principle of compounding, not just in money, but in every area of your life. Because just as small financial investments grow exponentially over time, small improvements in your habits, your skills, and your mindset can lead to exponential growth in your success. And this is where another key principle comes into play. That acceleration is the result of consistency, because the longer you stay committed, the more your efforts begin to multiply, the more opportunities begin to appear, and the more your results begin to compound. And this is where you begin to see the true power of discipline, not as restriction, but as freedom. Because discipline creates structure, structure creates consistency, and consistency creates results, and those results create options, opportunities, and ultimately freedom. And this is where your life begins to expand, because you are no longer limited by inconsistency, by distraction, or by lack of direction. You are guided by a system that is designed for success. And this is where the final realization becomes clear that success is not about doing more. It is about doing the right things consistently. It is about focusing on the fundamentals, mastering the basics, and trusting that over time, those small actions will lead to extraordinary outcomes. And as Darren Hardy powerfully states, no matter what you learn or what strategy you employ, success comes as the result of the compound effect. And this is the truth that changes everything. Because once you understand it, once you apply it, and once you commit to it, you realize that your future is not determined by chance. It is determined by choice, by habit, by consistency, and by time. And this is where your journey truly begins, not with a single breakthrough, but with a single step, repeated daily with purpose, with discipline, and with belief, knowing that every action you take is shaping your future, and that future, if you stay consistent, will be greater than anything you have imagined, because the compound effect, when applied with intention, has the power to transform not just your results, but your entire life.